歡迎。
May I welcome the deputations for attending the public hearing on the EIA report of the third runway. I'd like to make 2 points. First, please note that your speeches or written submissions are not protected by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. You need to comply with the rules and instructions in respect of attending meetings at the Legislative Council and also at the public gallery. I will invite you to speak. Each will be given 3 minutes, and when the time is up, you have to stop. And after you have finished, then all of you have finished, then I'll ask the officials to respond, and then I will allow members to ask questions. First, Mr. Cheng Chu-hung. Well, Mr. Cheng Chu-hung is not going to speak. Then Madam CHUI Shing-fan. Mr. Peter Lee, I believe you recognize me. I am Mrs. Chair of the Shantou village. Mr. Lee and the villagers of Shantou and the AA staff had many closed-door meetings. Every time we asked the AA to provide the minutes, the AA agreed to provide the minutes, but we asked them many times, and they have not given any minutes to us. We also asked the AA to openly respond to the questions we've asked. The AA has been dodging all the questions. The AA, the EPD, and the CAD, I want to ask you, what is the NEF contour in your mind? Those living near the old Kai Tak airport had the deepest impression of NEF. And we are living near the airport. We are affected by noise day in, day out, or every day and night. You officials don't have such an experience. The AA collected data in the morning, and then in the evening they do their work, they finish their work, and then they just knock off. But we are living near the airport. Your report, your data, do they mean anything to you? In December, the AA issued letters to us and said that there would be an ex gratia payment of $65,000. The $65,000 are intended to buy out the 15 years of noise impacts. Isn't it a mockery, Mr. Lee? $65,000 for 15 years. Is $65,000 enough to pay you for a month, Mr. Lee? Since 1998 until now, they are just repeating their words as far as the EIA report is concerned. Have you tried to understand our problem?
I do not see the AA's commitment, and I also did not see any efforts from the EPD. I hope you can face up to the problem. If we only talk about the economic gains of the third runway, I don't think we need this meeting, so I'm opposed to this project. Thank you, Ms. Choi. Next, Mr. Ho Siu-kei. I represent Santau Village. Since the airport was opened in 1998, recommendations of the third runway have been ongoing. The AA and relevant government departments have treated the public as valueless beings. They were only thinking about their own interests, and on the people and environments affected, the administration and AA only served to do the very minimum. They were ignoring all the affected people. Since I'm a representative of the village, our villages have a feeling that they are being abandoned or ignored by the Hong Kong government. All of them are very unhappy with the Hong Kong government because the government's job is only to come up with reports with their so-called expertise in order to facilitate their own work. For the affected people nearby, they have all been ignored. So we are very disillusioned about the Hong Kong government. The government's work is really one-directional. There was no interaction, so we are very, very disappointed with the government, and we are more and more unhappy with the government, in fact. We were the ones who contributed to Hong Kong in the past. But right now, the work of the government officials and the experts nowadays are really one-directional. They have ignored the needs and views of the villages, and their comments are not being valued. So I oppose to the EIA report. This is completely unacceptable because the report has completely ignored the minority. And in our society today, we are really helpless. And we are very disappointed with the relevant institutions and authorities. Next, Ms. Chair Kwai-ying. Members, EPD, Mr. Lee, I'm an indigenous resident of Santau Village. I want to add further to what Mr. Ho Siu-kei said. The letters sent to us in December were returned on the 2nd of January. I'm not sure if this has shown up in your records. I have witnessed the prosperous development of the airport in 1998. Before the government confirmed the construction of the airports, the government consulted the Tai-o Rural Committee. They had a draft plan for a road connecting our village to Tung Chung. And at that time, the EIA report showed that our village was not affected. There were minor disturbances during the construction phase, and they really cared about us. They even gave us air conditioners as compensation, and we were really appreciative of their efforts. Last year, when we met 4 times with representatives from the AA, and we had petition events, and we attended to AA seminars, and we wrote letters to the CEDD and the Rural Committee of Tai-o, and in December last year, the letters from AA showed that our requests were completely ignored, and the only thing was that we were given $65,000 as ex gratia payment as compensation for the last 16 years. This is really an insult to us. And for people living within the NEF 25 contour, they would be given another allowance. At that time, we did not lie within the contour, and we asked whether the noise is getting louder and louder, and you did not address the issue. And you said the problem did not exist. Why didn't you even take the effort to write us a letter to address the noise issue? You were trying to dodge the issue. We used to have a lot of trust in the airport and the government, but this has changed. But now we have to stand up and fight for our own interests. Mr. Chair King-tin, I'm an indigenous resident of Santao village. I'm sure a lot of you do not know where we are. We are actually located very close to the airport, within 1 kilometer of the airport. And the part of our village is covered in the NEF 25 contour, and this is against what the government said 25 years ago, and their promise at that time was that we would not be affected by the noise. Right now, our village is being hindered by the noise, and with the development and prosperity of Hong Kong, we are seeing more and more flights in Chek Lap Kok Airport. Since in 1999, we have about 160,000 flights, and by 2003, we have 370,000 by 2017. For the villages living near the airports, we have been suffering from serious noise pollution as well as air pollution. At the moment, during the EIA consultation phase, between now and 2021, the Lands Department has stopped vetting applications for new small houses. The airports, we need expansion for the airport, and at the same time, our village also needs to expand, but now you are halting our development. So who can we turn to for help? As a responsible administration or a responsible airport authority, you should face up to this problem instead of dodging it or avoiding it. I hope the government and AA can set up a cross-divisional force involving the Tai O Rural Committee, Lands Department, village representatives, and come up with a solution in everyone's interest. Thank you. Next, Ms. Chair Lai-ngo. Good afternoon. I'm an indigenous resident of Santao Village. I have the following feelings towards the third runway projects. My fellow villagers have told us about the impacts to the village. The airport is right across the village. It's very close to us. All along, even with 2 runways, I live in Tin Sham village. It lies within NEF 25, and we had to suffer from huge noises every night. My mother, as well as other elderly people, have been tortured by this noise, and they are suffering every night. Even though the EIA report said that after the completion of the third runway, the noise would be moved northwards, but we are talking about 2022, and in the meantime, how many sleepless nights do our elderly people have to suffer? And the government stopped us from building new small houses because we lie in the NEF 25 region, and the government said it's not fit for the habitation. So where can we go? A lot of people are concerned with the dolphins, but no one really cares about our village. A lot of our villagers have nowhere to live. And another issue is marine pollution. When I was small, my mother used to go there and to fetch seashells. But right now the water quality is so bad that we cannot do that anymore. And the environment has deteriorated so much, and yet no one would compensate us for the loss. I used to stargaze at that area at our village, but today all we are looking at is a host of light beams. We have a lot of light pollution. We have a lot of villages have been sacrificed, and what kind of compensation can we receive? So you're just giving us 60,000 or so. This is nothing. In the report, only one line was mentioned on Shatawan village and Shantao village, and the report only said that reasonable compensation would be given out, and that actually means $65,000. It means nothing to the village. Next, Mr. Chair Kwok-hong. I'm an indigenous villager of Shantao village in Tai-o. In 2012, the AA conducted an EIA exercise. Applications for small house developments were completely stopped since that time. The reason was that with the construction of the third runway, well, our village has not seen any approvals in small house developments in the last 17 years. And if this persists, it will be a long, long time before we see another small house in our village. The AA and government decided to halt small house developments because of the NEF 25 contour restriction. The question is, are we going to see any new small house developments in the future? Next, Mr. CHOW Yiu-jo. Good afternoon. I'm an indigenous resident of Shantao village. And my father sent me here today, and from a health perspective, I live in Shantao village every day. Whenever I go out, whenever I open the door or the window, there would be a very strong smell of alcohol. The EPD is monitoring public transport. It's monitoring the pollution caused by land transport. What have you done on aircrafts? Would the emissions from aircrafts harm the health of the villages? Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Chair Kwai-ying.
I don't want to speak. Thank you. Next is Mr. Chair Park-kin. Thank you, Chairman. I speak on behalf of the Hong Kong Institute of Highways and Transportation Department. Hong Kong is a world-class city. In order to engage in long-term development, we need the third runway, and we therefore support the project. The sustainability of a large-scale infrastructural project requires achievement in economic benefits as well as environmental protection. We hope that the administration will consider the following views. Now, the HKAA, the contractors and the consultants work together to conduct the project. Is the project sustainable? It depends on the attitude of the team towards the project. There are three concerns: social benefits and social concerns, sustainable issues, impact on overall economic and social conditions in Hong Kong. The scale of the problem or issue exceeds that of the AA's ambit. The construction and engineering strategy adopted is also an important issue. It has to take into account whether the development is sustainable in the long term. In the past 30 months, the AA conducted the EIA assessment, the EIA, and talked to stakeholders, and it obtained the permit and approval in November last year. The AA has to comply with the permit conditions, and we would like to make certain suggestions for the AA. Is there any evidence showing that the AA and also the designers have actively adopted sustainable development principles in planning and design and project? Is there evidence that the AA has undertaken to conduct impact and benefit assessment of the project on a wider scale? Is there evidence that HKA have undertaken a social impact and benefit assessment on a wider scale? Is there any evidence that the project team has actively adopted a sustainable strategy while at the same time achieving social and economic and environmental benefits? Next, Mr. Wong Chi-chun. Now, this is a large-scale reclamation project, and many have spoken on the dolphins, but no one has spoken on behalf of the Chinese Bahaha. Now, in fact, the Chinese Bahaha will be adversely affected. The reclamation of the airport in Chalapkok drove away other shrimps and fishes. The dolphins cannot bear with the noise. The Chinese Bahaha cannot find any food. In fact, some believe that the vessels are not speeding in the marine parks. But in fact, the marine parks can't help. The Bahaha has to swim to Mawan and further away. And some want to catch Bahaha with trawlers. Some species of values, such as the trout sweet lips, which is on the red list as vulnerable, are not protected. And also the sea cucumbers or the other kinds of shrimps are not regarded as important, and they are not assessed. In fact, the assessment is unreasonable and indeed ridiculous. Should we just protect marine animals in our waters when they become endangered throughout the Chinese waters? Say, for example, concerning stingrays, some of them are endangered species like black-faced spoonbills. Now, there was an assessment, but it was said that the density was low and the fish would swim to other areas, and therefore there is no need to explain. There is no need to protect them. Well, if that's the case, then there is no need to conduct any environmental impact assessment, because the birds can fly away, the fish can swim away. So the argument of the report is really not logical. Now, with the third runway, the Chinese Bahaha will not stay in Hong Kong waters because that is only a dead pool of water. And finally, the Chinese Bahaha also wants true universal suffrage. Next, Ms. NG Ching-yan. I am a student of the City University. I'm going to speak on my view concerning the EIA system. Now, the EIA report has been endorsed. The EIA report has a lot of problems which have not been resolved. They owe us an explanation. The report is endorsed because the system is not sound. Now, the objective of the EIA study is to prevent adverse impacts on the environment. Let us look at the flaws of the EIA report. The Friends of the Earth has pointed out that AOQ has been an important element of AOQ, ozone, has been excluded in the EIA report. But ozone is a very important element in air pollution, and this important item has been excluded. There is the cumulative impacts of different big projects, such as the Hong Kong Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, the artificial island, and also the runway. The cumulative impacts can be very big, but there is no intention to release the cumulative impacts of these projects. As for the impact on the Chinese white dolphins, the report is not specific. You might have heard about the complaints of dolphin experts and green groups, and their views in respect of adverse impacts on Chinese white dolphins. And there is a question of whether the Chinese white dolphins will come back to Hong Kong after the completion projects. All these issues have not been addressed, and yet the permit was issued. And a Chinese white dolphin was found dead in Lantau, and in fact the head, the internal bones of the head was cut off, and that was really scary. The EIA system favors those who are powerful. It is not transparent. The public have very little say. Of course, we can give our views, we can give our comments, but the ACE report, the ACE is just a meeting for professionals and for the power that be, and the discussion is not open to the public, and the system is not transparent. Now, let me go back to the fundamental issue. Is there a need for the expansion of the airport? If there is no solution to the so-called air wall, then there is the third runway is not necessary. Some may say that this is not trustworthy, but after this incident, people have queries whether development is needed. Next is Mr. Tam Chapman. Good afternoon. This is the third time I express my view in this council on the third runway. Last time it was the first time was in the previous electrical building. We thought that the government would listen to our views and consider environmental issues. On the second time, I came to this new building, and the Secretary for Development, Mrs. Lam, said that she was happy to see young people coming to speak up because the future belonged to us. She said that the administration will address the demand of the environmental groups. Why she said the government would meet the demand of the environmental groups. But isn't it the issue of the government? Isn't it the issue of the community at large, and not just the issue belonging to the environmental groups? I had reservation when I heard her comments. This is the third time I'm here. I'm really disillusioned and disappointed. Look at the excess rail, the licensing dispute over HKTV, and also the political reforms. We are really disappointed. It is not something unexpected when the EIA report is endorsed. Public consultation is just window dressing. However hard we try, it's just useless. We see the completion of one white elephant after another. They are just trampling the people of Hong Kong underfoot, and Hong Kong people has to foot the bill. I'm really scared. I'm not an environmental expert. I may not have understanding of technical data. the reason for building the third runway is just for economic achievement. There will be more planes, more tourists, more income for Hong Kong. But money is not the only thing in the world. We need to defend many things and preserve many things. Just like the indigenous villages, they want a happy home. They want peace and tranquility. If we have the third runway and if capacity is not enough, are we going to build a fourth runway? Is the government going to build another airport? If we just look at money and we don't care about our natural resources, we just do reclamation to go after money, then Hong Kong will just go down. I hope the senior officials will consider the fact that Hong Kong shouldn't just put all its attention on money. You should consider what is the vision for Hong Kong. Next, Mr. Long Chi-wai. I'm really surprised that the residents of Santau village have spoken on their views towards the third runway. And the villagers do not know the health impacts and also the emissions of the aircrafts. They don't know the health impacts. I find it strange. It is important to them. I would have thought that they know that thoroughly. Our group pays special attention to air pollution and health. I may be repeating. I may be long-winded. The EIA report is full of flaws. Ms. Ng has highlighted an important point. In the whole report, nothing has been said on the impact of ozone. They have taken that for granted, that nothing can be said on that. NO2 is a major pollutant, and therefore they consider ozone just as a derivative, and the derivative pollutant, and therefore ozone need not be mentioned. I think their report is based on a report of the HKUST. In that HKUST report, NOx, the relationship between NOx and ozone, is that it is possible that NOx may reduce the intensity or the intensity of ozone. But that is only a possibility. Why the EIA has just adopted this assumption and does not explore the issue of ozone? I'm not convinced. Their assumption is just based on a report which speaks of a possibility only.
The level of contaminants in Hong Kong has been ever rising since 1997. All around Hong Kong, when you look at Tsuen Wan, Tung Chung, Kwun Tong, etc., even compared with old data, the data is still increasing. I think this is something the government must address. Next, Mr. Kenneth Bell, I'll give it a pass. That's all for the deputation's statements today. Some of them did not speak, but please be reminded that the documents 99 to 103 contain submissions from the attendants today. I will invite the EPD, AFCD, and AA to give a consolidated response. First, Mr. Chair from EPD. Thank you, Chairman, as well as all the deputations here today. And for this EIA report, the role of the EPD is to approve the report and issue the environmental permits. So I will give a brief on our EIA process and our grounds, and I will address to some of the questions as well. Since we have the FCD here today as well for issues related to the ecology, the FCD can provide more details. And for the measures which will be adopted by AA, they can give more on that as well. We had 3 sessions already today. A lot of the deputations are in favor of the project. We also have a lot of people against it. And they gave their reasons respectively. So it's obvious that it's important to strike a balance between development and conservation. And the purpose of the EIA ordinance is to balance conservation and development. The EIA ordinance covers different aspects like ecology, air quality, noise quality, etc. A set of objective standards were drawn up under the ordinance. Since the EPD, are not experts in all the fields, the responsibilities have been assigned to different departments. For example, on ecology, the AFCD would be responsible. For vessels, the Marine Department will be in charge. And for aircrafts and the operation of aviation related matters, the Civil Aviation Department will be in charge. So after receiving the EIA report from AA, the EPD would vet all the items against the statutory requirements, and we will also consolidate the comments from the public and the ACE, and we would pass them on to the relevant departments in charge to confirm that all the items have met the necessary legal requirements. So the vetting of the application does not depend on specific officials such as myself. It does not depend on personal preferences. It really hinges on whether the legal requirements are met. So the entire process is very stringent and impartial. We would not be biased towards the airport authority. And a lot of people are concerned with the measures suggested in the EIA report and whether or not they would be implemented at the end. Some people mentioned the EIA report for when the Cheklapko Airport was opened in 1998. There's one major difference between this EIA report and the previous one. Today we are talking about a statutory EIA report, and such statutory requirements weren't in place in 1998 during the opening of the airport. So the EPD has no legal power on the previous or old EIA report, but for this new report, we do have statutory power granted by the law. When they implement, when the relevant measures are implemented, the AA must follow all the rules and requirements, and they must carry out the mitigation measures suggested. They must set up a panel to monitor and realize these measures. They must also hire an independent assessor to make sure that the mitigation measures mentioned in the EP have been implemented, and a regular report must be submitted to the EPD. Apart from this report, we would send inspectors to ensure that they are implementing the measures according to plan. And as such, we can monitor their performance. If they are not up to standard, we have the right to take action legally. We will issue warnings to request some improvements on their parts. Very often during the construction phase of a project, they might encounter various issues such as design issues. If any revisions are required, they must be submitted to us by way of an application. And we would vet these revisions to see if they would create any new problems, and if so, they have to introduce extra mitigation measures. So all in all, the construction project would be monitored in a stringent manner under the law, and we will make sure that they implement what they promised. And our system is unique. No other country in the world has such arrangements in place. In terms of implementation, some deputations mentioned the concern of health. For example, some people complain about the issue of odor, the smell of gasoline. We actually have one chapter that lists out impacts to health. The applicant has to list out the chemicals generated and the associated health risks. And a detailed assessment is done in terms of the health impacts. So the adverse health risks of the third runway must be controlled to a reasonable level. And the hygiene department has read this report, and they confirmed that the report is acceptable. Some deputations had some specific questions. For example, the issue of ozone. And they would like to know why ozone is not studied in the EIA report. We have a lot of contaminants. We have direct contaminants or emissions. We also have secondary emissions created by a chain of chemical reactions between other chemicals. So ozone is an example of a secondary contaminant. It's generated by other chemicals. And it's generated by the chemical reactions between different contaminants in the PRD region. If a project creates emissions across different areas, if nitrogen oxides are created, they would react with the ozone, and the nitrogen oxides can actually reduce the density of ozone. So in many EIA reports, the amounts of ozone is not assessed. The generation of ozone is actually not caused by this project. They are caused by vehicles, aircrafts, etc. The nitrogen oxides emitted by vehicles and aircrafts can actually reduce the level of ozone. If the third runway actually lowers the level of ozone, there's nothing we have to assess. So we are doing it from a scientific manner on which contaminants we assess and which we don't. And during the judicial review, during multiple judicial reviews, our practice was deemed to be correct. Some deputations mentioned the aggregate impacts to the environment. As you know, the EIA report is very comprehensive, so you might have missed certain details. The fact is, the airport EIA report has covered developments in the Pearl River Delta as well as developments in the pipeline. These have not been ignored, and the impacts of these developments have been reflected in the report. So this is really our standard practice. We have not ignored any developments in the report. Some deputations might have misunderstandings on our EIA approval process. They might think we are biased towards the AA, or we are trying to aid the approval of the third runway. What I want to say is when we enforce the EIA ordinance, our only consideration are the legal requirements. The EIA ordinance is only one of the regulations the project must satisfy. It must satisfy all the relevant regulations as well. So it's not the sole decision of EPD. Next, Mr. Joseph Sham, Assistant Director of the AFCD. The AFCD's role is to make judgments on two fronts, including the impacts to fisheries and impacts to the ecology. So we are in charge of these two areas. We will also follow requirements of the EIA ordinance as well as the technical memorandum on EIA process when we vet the third runway projects. On the EIA reports, on the methodology of surveying marine organisms or marine ecology, we have looked at the baseline figures for marine life as well as the final results of the ecology impact assessment. We found these results in line with all the relevant requirements. And on the loss of marine habitats, the mitigation measures recommended by AA have covered different organisms, and a compensation fund was recommended. And on the marine park, the most important mitigation measure is to compensate for the 650 hectares of land lost through reclamation. There will be a new marine park spanning 2,400 hectares. And apart from this new marine park, it will link up with the Sha Chao and Lung Ku Chao marine parks, as well as the Brothers Islands Marine Park, as well as the PRD Dolphin Sanctuary. The total area of this protection area will reach 5,200 hectares. And we can create a synergy effects among these different protection zones for Chinese white dolphins. Next, General Manager Environment, Mr. Peter Lee from the Airport Authority, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll respond to the views of the speakers and then clarify certain issues. Now, in the previous session, speakers said that we had meetings many times with the Shantou villages. They asked for minutes. We have no intention to hold up the minutes. We hope that we can give you the minutes ASAP. Your concern is whether we have reflected your demands to the various departments. At the last meeting, I told you that we had already reflected your views, including the application for village houses and construction roads. And in the previous session, I also mentioned that. As for the two packages in December, there were two packages. Let me stress. One is the home improvement grant, $55,000, and also the installation of windows and air conditioners. Now we will continue to talk to the villagers if there is any proposal which is helpful to the village, and if it is within the ability of the HKAA, we are happy to discuss with you. Yes, also, the issue has been addressed by Mr. Chair of the EPD. In our EIA report, explanation has been given on the technical level. There is a sensitivity test. There is a comparison between having the third runway and not having the third runway. Because of the emission of NOx, there is a decline of ozone in the vicinity of the airport. Some speakers mentioned the air wall. In the first session, I already explained that airspace management is under the CAD in Hong Kong. As far as we know, Hong Kong, the mainland, and the Macau authorities have worked together basing on the ICAO standards, take into account the expansion needs of the airports within the region, and that has taken into account the operation of the third runway. There are measures to enhance the capacity of airspace in the region. Do members have any questions? If not, then I'll ask the department to clarify this. A speaker spoke on light pollution and also the smell of fuel. Can you explain that? Mr. Chair, concerning the smell of fuel, well, I didn't conduct any study, so I don't know the source of the smell of fuel. But in the EIA report, there is a detailed health assessment. The operation of an airport may generate what kind of chemicals and what are the various intensities of the chemicals and their impacts on health. There is a detailed assessment. You don't need to worry that the operation of the market will cause unacceptable health impacts. As for light pollution, light pollution is not within the ordinance, so it is not covered in the EIA report. Well, in the future, are you going to deal with the light pollution after the expansion of the third runway? When I return from, when I go down, I saw the whole airport was lit up. The villages are just within 1 kilometer of the airport, and the light will affect their daily lives. Yes, we're happy to discuss with the HKAA to deal with light pollution administratively. Any questions from members? Do you have any follow-up questions? If not, then, well, in fact, we start from 9 this morning. Probably many members have already asked their questions many times this morning, and I believe members have heard the valuable views of members, and your views will be put on record. And when we conduct our discussions, your views will be for our reference. If members have no objection, I propose to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for coming. And may I thank the officials, the AA representative, and also the Secretariat for helping us with the meeting. The meeting is now adjourned.